poison ivy. The very thought of it may cause you to start scratching. But if you've ever been exposed to poison ivy, oak, or poison sumac, you are well aware of the unpleasant experience from contact with these plants. Poisonous plants in one form or another can be found throughout the United States. The prime hazard is the allergic reaction resulting from contact with the resin produced by the plants. These resins are so toxic that in the case of poison ivy and oak, only 1/1000th of a gram is all it takes for a rash, and only 1/4 of an ounce is enough to cause a rash on every person on Earth. It's important to know that exposure to the toxic resins can come from both direct and indirect contact, as well as carried by smoke from burning plants. Smoke containing poison plant resin can enter your eyes and respiratory system and can result in serious health effects. The toxic resins can even remain active on dead plants for 5 years or more. Workers are often exposed by touching items such as tools, equipment, clothing, or even animals that may have been in contact with these poisonous plants. Many outdoor occupations, such as tree trimmers, landscapers, surveyors, park and highway maintenance, meter readers, and firefighters face frequent exposure concerns. The best way to avoid exposure is your ability to identify the plants in your region and avoid contact. Poison ivy is actually part of the cashew family and usually grows in a number of forms, such as a bush 3 to 6 feet high, vines on tree trunks, or even running over the ground. However, poison ivy is not usually found in elevations above 5,000 feet, but can be found from Nova Scotia to British Columbia and south to Florida and Texas. Poison ivy has 3 dark green grooved leaves on each stem. They may also be partially or even entirely sawtoothed along the edges, along with a resiny appearance. When the plant is mature, it will have a white, waxy berry that also will cause a rash if touched. In early fall, the leaves will turn a scarlet red. A species related to poison ivy includes poison oak, which grows in California, the Pacific Northwest, some areas in the East, and some regions of Western Canada. Poison oak is a shrub and also has a poisonous resin. Like poison ivy, this plant's resin is highly irritating to the skin. The resins may stick to the clothing or skin of people while coming in contact with the plants. Many people have developed a rash merely by taking off their shoes after walking through poison oak. Poison oak has a resemblance to oak leaves, but is not related to oak trees. Like poison ivy, the foliage is grouped in leaves of 3, which are green or scarlet in color, with the leaves appearing somewhat rounded, lobed, and sawtoothed. 2 of the leaflets form a pair on opposite sides of the plant stalk, while the third stands up by itself at the tip. Poison oak also bears a fruit that is a whitish wax-like berry that can also cause irritation as well. Poison sumac is a shrub or small tree that may grow as high as 25 feet and primarily grows in swampy areas of the Northeast. The tip of a poison sumac branch may carry groups of 7 to 13 leaves with a smooth, resiny appearance. The edges of the leaves are not toothed as with poison oak or ivy. When sumac matures, they turn a dark green, glossy color, which again gradually turns to a bright red or orange in the fall. Poison sumac also bears small yellow flowers growing in long, narrow, drooping clusters. Non-poisonous varieties of sumac differ from the poisonous variety by having from 9 to 31 leaves. In addition, non-poisonous sumac bears red as opposed to white berries. So it's good to be armed with this information before entering areas with poison sumac. No one is born sensitive to poison plants. Sensitivity is acquired by contact with the plants. The first contact generally sensitizes the person so that future contacts will result in contact dermatitis or rash. Usually the first contact will not result in a rash, It's subsequent exposures that result in a rash. So it's important to know that once sensitized, future exposures will cause a dermatitis outbreak. There have been some cases where exposures have occurred when washing contaminated clothing. Even mechanics can be exposed when working on vehicles that have driven through poison oak patches. Again, never burn poison ivy. Well, this is no folktale. In fact, the resin is carried away with the smoke, easily inhaled, and causing serious exposure to skin, eyes, and lungs, which can result in hospitalization or, in some cases, death. The usual symptoms of poison plant exposure are itchy skin where the plant touched your skin, red streaks or redness where the plant brushed against the skin, small bumps or larger raised areas and hives, and finally, blisters filled with fluid that may leak out. Once you've been exposed to the resins or resin, a rash may appear from 1 to 3 days after contact. The area affected will become red, swollen, and very itchy. Severe cases will require medical treatment. The rash will usually last about a week, but in highly sensitive people, the rash may last 2 weeks or more. A rash usually appears in 8 to 48 hours after exposure, but can also show up from 5 hours to 15 days later as well. If your first exposure is with a poison plant, the rash may take more than a week to appear. However, a rash develops much more quickly after subsequent contacts. The rash is not contagious. You can't scratch or spread a rash after it occurs, even if you touch it or the blister fluid. Though the rash may seem to be spreading, it's likely still developing from an earlier contact, or you have touched something else that had resin on it. And the more resin you come in contact with, the more severe your skin reaction. Severe reactions to small amounts of resin may also occur in people who are highly sensitive. Serious symptoms may include swelling of the face, mouth, neck, genitals, or eyelids, which may prevent the eyes from opening. People who may have used the outdoors to relieve themselves sometimes end up with an unwelcome surprise. Be sure to warn whoever may wash contaminated clothing. If clothing is to be washed at home, be sure to avoid contact with children and to warn your spouse of the potential of exposure. Should you come in contact with any of these plants, immediately wash the affected body part with plenty of soap and water. This should be done ideally within 10 minutes of initial exposure. The Food and Drug Administration suggests using rubbing alcohol and water to help remove the oily resin from both your skin and other items that may have come into contact with the plants. Again, since the toxic properties of resins can enter the skin within 10 minutes, time is of the essence. If you wait more than 10 minutes, you may not be able to stop the dermatitis. Of course, avoid using scrub brushes and rough washcloths as they can further irritate the skin. There are some commercial products available on the market, such as Zanfel, Ivy Cleanse Towelettes, and Technu Extreme Poison Ivy Scrub that may be of benefit as well, so it might be a good idea to keep them with you when entering areas with poison plants. For relief of severe itching, calamine lotion or other over-the-counter medications might be of benefit, but check with your doctor first. Dress the affected areas with a light gauze bandage, and of course, always consult your doctor. The best method of prevention is avoidance, but in some occupations, this may not be entirely possible.